Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
Innovative Thinkers, episode number 194. Innovative Thinkers. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards, serial entrepreneur for over 40 years, digital marketer, and lead generation expert. Teaches how to make the Chamber of Commerce your number one business partner. Welcome, Christopher Knight.
And thank you very much, Frances. This is a pleasure to join you and your audience today. I feel extremely honored, to tell you the truth. Never would have expected this at all.
You know what? You have such an extensive bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business, Christopher?
I guess for the main part that I have been, quote, and it's overused, I think at times, a serial entrepreneur. I have owned my own businesses for the last 40 years or more. And during that time, I've had a variety of businesses, from business that handled school fundraising to business that was in sports marketing, where I worked directly with the NFL and did 2 Super Bowls and 2 Pro Bowls as far as that business went. And then I worked 20 years in the transportation business and did time-critical deliveries, where we delivered everything from human parts for transplant to aircraft parts throughout the United States. And then, of course, that particular business I set aside because of my wife's passing from multiple sclerosis, and moved into the digital marketing space, which I've been in for over 16 years right now. So that's kind of a little background history in that regard.
So sorry to hear about the passing of your wife, Christopher. So what are you doing now? What is making you excited to get up every day?
Well, just as a kind of a brief overview of how I got into it and how I succeeded, if you will, at digital marketing. And when you say digital marketing, that covers a wide range of things. It's advertising, it's anything from billboards to bathtubs, I used to tell people with my agency. But for the most part, I got into it after I left my transportation business. I moved into a town that I literally did not know a soul. That was a close by town, but I certainly didn't know anybody there. And I decided to do this because I've been following it during my transportation days and looking at the various people that did that type of work. And I thought, I've run my transportation business via computer for the last almost 20 years, and I should be able to help other people learn how to do that with their businesses. So I moved into this town not knowing anyone, and certainly I don't mean to sound like the old guru stories, but I had very little money because back then we did not have the Affordable Care Act, and pre-existing conditions like multiple sclerosis X you out of any insurance. So we were paying cash for everything, which dwindled us down to very little at the point that she passed away. Anyway, moving over, so I had a little money, moved into community, and I thought, I've got to get something going quickly. Somebody invited me to go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and I had never been part of a Chamber of Commerce in my entire life. For 40 years of business, never been part of the Chamber. He walked me in the door, and when I walked in, I looked around and I said, my goodness, all my prospects are right here, right in front of me. Why should I look anywhere else? So with that in mind, I got very, very active with the Chamber of Commerce. I worked what I call from the inside out. In other words, getting in with some committees, volunteering my talents in the digital marketing space to the Chamber. And after 2 years, I was able to have reached the point that over 80% of my clients came from referrals. Referrals from where? The Chamber of Commerce. So now I'm very passionate about teaching others how to do what I did, because the way I did it, of course, I did it by happen chance. I can't say I'm the smartest guy in the world, right? I said, I'll try this. Okay, it didn't work. All right, I'm going to try this. Okay, that worked. Okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead and keep doing that. So I put together, a group, and in that group, I teach people how to do exactly what I did. So that's my passion right now, Frances, and I truly enjoy it. I really, really do.
Christopher, someone's listening to this podcast and they're saying, wow, is this information outdated? Doing business with the chamber, it's COVID-19, it's shelter in place. How is this information relevant?
Well, the general part of it remains true regardless of the conditions. You're talking about helping out small businesses in the community. That's what the Chamber of Commerce does. Although they certainly have members that are very large corporations, but they really focus on the mom and pops and the smaller businesses in most Chamber of Commerce throughout the country. During this COVID period, many of those chambers have gone virtual. They have gone into virtual meetings with their board. They've gone into virtual meetings as far as their Friday coffee times or their networking meetings. And in fact, there's a good friend of mine in Beaverton, Oregon, who's the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce there. And she and I had already been in touch a number of times. And I've had her on my podcast, as a matter of fact, and also on the site so that the members of the group could hear her telling about her chamber. And during that time, she had already decided that virtual was the way to go. And 3 days after the government said, we're shutting down in Beaverton, Oregon, and it is COVID-19 time, quote, quote, and we need to develop something else, she was already ready. They, on that Tuesday, have shut down. Friday, they had a Friday coffee time for the members. She was already ready to go virtual that same day. And every event on her calendar was handled virtually. Now, how's it still relevant? Those folks who want to join the Chamber of Commerce and want to be a part of it can also think in terms of virtual. Many chambers, I'm very fortunate, I consult with some chambers around the country about going virtual and keeping their members happy, because the chamber needs the membership. And they also realize that during this period, some members can say, well, I'm not getting anything out of it, so I'm not going to sign up right now. When it comes back, well, I'll sign back up. Well, of course, that hurts the chamber a great deal. So I've been fortunate to consult with chambers on going virtual. Anyone who decides that they want to become a part of a chamber right now, it's probably the very best time they could do it, because they can benefit not only the chamber, but the community with great ideas. And that's what's happening right now. We're coming to a virtual community. Just yesterday, Google announced that they're not bringing any of their people back into their campus until July of 2021. That's a year from now. So the virtual wave, if you will, is taking over everywhere. Big companies have always known it existed, but they haven't taken advantage of it because they're saying, well, it's working all right now. They were forced into it with COVID-19. If anyone wants to think that everything's going to go back to normal, it's not. It's going to be a hybrid of virtual and live, going to the office, whatever the case might be. That's people that are working from home right now. They're very happy. They've got their kids. They're taking care of the kids. They don't have to pay for daycare, which is $500 a week. They don't have to worry about a number of things they would normally. And so the companies realize, well, wait a minute, my employees are happier and they're just as productive as they would be before. So same thing happens with chambers of commerce. You can be productive right now as a chamber, and anyone who wants to join a chamber right now should do so and participate in helping them grow virtually. Does that answer that question?
Absolutely. Christopher, you mentioned your podcast. Share with our audience about your podcast and how can they listen?
Well, the podcast that I have is called Unintentional Heroes, and we try to bring in folks that have come from scratching out a living, so to speak, and then growing their business into something that is meaningful. Doesn't mean they're millionaires or anything, but it's meaningful to them and other people. Unintentional Heroes is just what it means. And I do have a podcast at 10 a.m. live every Saturday morning on my group page, which is called Local Chamber Influencers. And on that page, that's where I also have, if you go to the units section, you'll find literally hundreds and hundreds of videos that train you how to work with the chamber for free. It's all for free. I don't charge anything. Although I do have a course coming out soon. So that's to be announced in that process called Chamber Mastery. I welcome everyone to join me for that particular podcast. And may I go ahead and kind of do a pre-alert on the second podcast that's coming up?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned, Christopher, not to cut you off, but you mentioned 10 o'clock. Is that Eastern, Pacific Standard? What time zone?
Yes, thank you for reminding me, because when I put it on my page, I always use EST because I have people from actually all over the world and all over the country that are part of the group. So I'm very careful about that. Obviously, not too careful this morning, but Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. And on the group page called Local Chamber Influencers, we have some tremendous people. Just recently, I had one of the, if you're involved in the digital world or even in business in general, you probably have looked at or tried, for example, Facebook ads. And I had literally one of the best Facebook ad people that I've ever met myself. And he was on there and went through a great many tips on how to be successful with Facebook ads. And those are the kind of people I like to have on that pass on knowledge, but also have on other people, coaches, trainers, people who are helping people grow their businesses in different ways. And that's what makes that program very, very interesting, is the variety. The one I have that will be coming out within the next, probably by the end of August, is a program called Make Your Pitch. And we are actually doing a podcast. My co-host is Ellen Harris, which is an instructor at NYU in the Strayer School of Entrepreneurship. So we're calling in young inventors and young entrepreneurs that want to pitch their particular idea. And if you will, it's kind of a takeoff on Shark Tank on podcast. So we will be talking to those young people. We'll be talking to VCs and angel investors on that podcast as well. And it is going to be extremely interesting. We are fortunate already to have sponsors for the program, and I'm looking forward to that. So that one will be syndicated. So you'll be able to find Make Your Pitch on iTunes and all the other podcast sites that you enjoy using for yourself.
Congratulations on that new podcast launch, and we look forward to hearing more about it and listening to it. Christopher, share what you are most grateful for right now in your life.
Oh, that's the easiest question you could ask me right there. What I'm most grateful for is having a reason to get up in the morning, because my main goal right now is actually to benefit others. I've been very fortunate in my life. I've had several very successful businesses. And at this point in time, I'm comfortable. And I realize that people really do need just some advice. They don't need to spend maybe $500 or $1,000 on a coach. They just need a little mentorship. And I do that on a regular basis with folks who call me and just say, well, what do you think about this or that? It is a great pleasure to me to be able to offer that advice. But it's just what it is. It's free advice, and you know what that means, right? It's just free advice. Whether they decide to take it or not is up to them, but I'm more than willing to offer it. Yesterday alone, I spent over 2.5 hours on the phone with only 2 people doing exactly that. And that all comes from the members in the local chamber influencers, plus in other groups that I also will go into and network in. Once I become known about what I do, I'll get calls from some of those folks. So I'm most grateful for the fact that I still have the knowledge and the skill to help others. That's what I'm most grateful for.
Christopher, you talked about success. Share a business or brand that is dominating that you admire and why.
This will wrinkle some feathers, I'm sure, but just yesterday there was a hearing in Washington on the antitrust with several major corporations, one of which was Amazon and Jeff Bezos. I admire Amazon as a major company. Some people say, well, they're dominating all the small businesses and taking them out and so forth. But just think about what it takes to the logistics, the planning, and all that goes with it, and how they developed over the years from just selling books now to during this COVID time. They have been benefiting so many hundreds of thousands of people with products that they don't want to go out and buy in the store because they don't want the exposure. I can tell you that I have certainly ordered more on Amazon recently than I ever have, and I love the Amazon Prime. But this is not an ad for Amazon. It's just a company that I admire what he has done, how he put it together. I know that there are a lot of naysayers as far as how they've affected small businesses that sell on their site. And I know that part of that is true, but I just admire the structure itself.
What problem exists in the world today that you would like to solve?
Oh, the main problem in the world, I think, starts at home in the U.S., and that's unity and community. I look around, I see all the various things that are going on, and I try to look at it from a non-political facet. But I don't think any of it that we're going through right now is political. They're trying to make it so, but the main problem that needs to be solved is bringing people together as one. And I don't care what your race or your color, your creed is, it does not matter. We're all in this together. And building a community, the United States of America was built from bringing everybody together. Obviously, we have many problems along the way. There's no doubt about that. But it started at least in that way, and it's moving and moving and moving closer to it. And every day I see people in Congress, and of course they're arguing now about several things that are so simple, like voting rights, which passed 20 years ago, 40 years ago, for God's sakes. Why would we be arguing about that right now? I just want I want the U.S. and the world to develop some unity and some community. And I guess that would be my answer to that particular question.
Christopher, I'm looking at your amazing background, lots of books. What are you reading now and why?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because I start a book and then I start another book and I start another book, and here we go, right? One of the most recent ones that I read and recommended, I'd heard about it for a long time, and it's not a big read. It's a small book and so forth. But the book is called Go Giver. And in that book, he outlines how you can give back to other people in a way that is beneficial. And I'm sorry, but I can't remember the author's name right now, but the name of the book is Go Giver. And I actually, I think last week or the week before, I actually did a series on it on my group page, so other people can kind of get an idea of what it was all about. But that's the most recent read, and probably one of the ones that's affected me as much as anything. Now, if you want to go back years ago, my book of preference, which I read over and over and over again, was Think and Grow Rich. That particular book taught me a great deal about people and how to approach people, to communicate with people, and also some theories on life itself. I think that book has had a dramatic influence on my business life, to say the least.
Speaking of business, let's shift gears for a moment. Talk about your worst moment in business and what was your takeaway?
Oh, my goodness gracious. Let's see here. When you've been in business as long as I have, there have been several moments, as you can imagine, right? And my worst moment in business, when I had my sports marketing company, which was called Sports Star. And I went to the NFL on Park Avenue at least 3 times a year and sat down and visited with the guys there about various projects and ideas. And I brought them one that was all about bringing in NFL merchandise into grocery stores and using that in-dial concept, where you buy pots and pans one week and it's this price, and this pan this week and the other. Anyway, I did an in-dial with NFL merchandise. Get a sports cap this week for 50% off. Next week, you get a 6-pack cooler that people can buy with all the local team logo. So they said, okay, we'll allow you to put it out into 3 markets. And that was Chicago, San Francisco, and San Diego. We were hearing rumors of the NFL players going on strike. And I went, boy, if I open this up and they go on strike, I'm in deep trouble. And I kept asking fellow officers, is there going to be a strike? Oh, no, don't worry about it. No problem. So I was very, very fortunate at my age, which was in my mid-30s or late 30s at that time. And I was able to secure a $3 million line of credit in order to buy the product and put it out into the marketplace, which I did. And they just wanted partial shipments at first. And after a week, all 3 of the chains, and this is not just one store, these are chains in these cities, multiple stores, all of them called and said, ship everything. It's going out like crazy. 4 weeks later, the team went on strike. And the sales not only dried up, they completely stopped. And here I'm sitting on $3 million worth of product, right? if you want to talk about your biggest disappointment in your life, because not only would it have been that year, but the next year we would have gone nationwide with that same product. And that project was worth probably $6 million, something like that. And that's back in the 80s. Okay. That's a lot of money back then. So when they shut down, all I could do was take the merchandise back from those companies. And then I sold it basically for pennies on the dollar, although I did pay off the loan that I had taken out with a bank. So anyway, if you want a big disappointment, there's one for you for sure, right there.
Christopher, you have been a serial entrepreneur, so you can share this aha moment for one of your businesses that you knew that it was going to be successful. What was that aha moment?
Well, I think it probably was my transportation company. We were into time-critical deliveries, which meant that somebody who called wanted the product picked up and delivered right now, whether it be across town or across the country. Most of our work, actually, we took packages to the airport and put them on airplanes to go wherever they needed to go. And that I got into that just because I had done a brief stint in between some of my entrepreneur work. I'd done a brief stint with a courier company, if you want to call it that, but it's not really. It's a time-critical delivery company. And I thought, this is a good idea. So here I went. And I started out with a Chevrolet four-door car making deliveries, and my wife answered the phones. And then we took on some national clients. And by national, I mean that the companies that actually get the orders from the big companies, and they pass them down to companies like mine in the particular cities they need to work on. And then it gets delivered from there. And so I had ended up, because of the aha was, this has wings. This will fly. And I knew it. I was willing to go ahead and take the chance with just starting out small. And before even 4 years was up, we said we did for 20 years. And after 4 years, I had over 45 drivers, and we were handling over close to $800,000 a month in deliveries and shipments. And that was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, I remember quite well one Christmas morning, we were sitting around the Christmas tree, and all the families opening gifts, and the phone rings, right? So, of course, it's 24/7. I got to answer the phone, and somebody needs something delivered to the airport, and they need it done right now. Well, of course, all my drivers I was thinking, well, I don't need to call any of them to do this. So up I get out of my chair with all my gifts around me and say, folks, I'll be back in about 3 hours. You guys have a great time. That was a very intense business. When I go to bed, I'd know that I would have to wake up at least 4 or 5 times at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning and answer the phone and take an order and a delivery, and then send it off and get a driver on the road immediately to go take care of it. I remember a funny time, one of the major clients that we had, that I talked to the dispatcher constantly, of course, and I would always get up and said, good morning, this is ASAP or whatever, and knowing full well that I just reached over and picked up the phone and I was sound asleep. And I remember one night he asked me, he said, are you up all night, 24 hours a day or what? Because I sounded so fresh when I answered the phone, because it was necessary not to sound like, hello, can I help you? Okay, I'll help you. No, good evening. How can I help you tonight? So it was an exciting business. I had an aha moment easily when we began that particular business. I knew it would be successful.
And talk about selling. Did you sell the business? How did you transition from transportation?
Well, that's certainly a tragic story, if you want to know the truth. As I mentioned, my wife had multiple sclerosis, and we certainly were doing very, very well. But when you're paying for every test, every MRI, every medical treatment that you possibly can, I don't care how much money you have, it gets drained extremely quickly. And of course, this was my high school sweetheart. This was the woman I'd loved all my life. Was I going to worry about spending the money? Of course not. So toward the end of that particular business, and as she passed away, we had very little left in the business. I wasn't able to sell it because of that. If I'd been smarter, I probably would have sold it 2 years earlier. But I kept thinking, well, we can hang on. But in life, things are not always fair. Things are not always right. But That's when as I mentioned, when I started digital marketing, I had very little money. That's the reason I had very little money. Even after making, actually, in most cases, over $1 million a year for at least 5 or 6 years. I was not either smart enough to handle it correctly, or if I were to actually tally all the bills, it would be easy to see where that money went. No doubt about it. I'll tell you a little personal story here. When she passed away, only 2 weeks later, I had an extreme problem, intestinal problem. Actually, intestines separated from the stomach, so I was bleeding inside and all the other stuff that goes with it. So straight to the hospital for 5 weeks. Now, at that point, I said, why do I want to stick around? I don't have any reason to. It's just, she's gone. Why am I sticking here, And then after about 3 or 4 weeks in the hospital, I woke up one morning and I said, you know what? She never complained. She was always happy. She was always knew that even though she ended up couldn't walk and could hardly see and all that good stuff. But I said, she never complained. Why are you complaining? Get ready and start building something again, because you've done it once, you can do it again. In fact, you've done it 4 times, you can do it again. And that was my biggest motivation when I began my digital agency or my marketing agency. So that's maybe a little personal as a story, but that's what truly happened.
Christopher, thank you so much for being transparent and talking about health. What does self-care look like for Christopher?
I have a regimen that I do, and that is when I get up. First thing I do when I get up, and this is, I have a regimen of meditation, and I will meditate when I get up and when I go to bed, as a matter of fact. And after that, then I get on the treadmill, and I'll do at least 45 minutes to an hour. So I get up early. I get up around 4:30 in the morning, every morning. And at that point, then I have some people don't believe in it. I certainly do, but I take supplements, several of them, one of which I really believe in, and that's turmeric, curcumin, which I've taken for 10 years now. And it is, I swear by it, as far as keeping my strength, my organs strong, everything else. It really has helped. And that's after 3 internal surgeries that I've had because of the first one that that was caused actually from an ulcer that caused that one. As you can imagine, the times then were pretty rough. But I think the main thing as far as self-health is concerned is more importantly than your exercise and any kind of supplements you take or anything else, it's what you do daily, what motivates you. When I get up, in fact, I have every morning, Monday through Friday, I have a show on called Coffee Time with Chris. And 9 a.m. Eastern time, it's on every morning, Monday through Friday. And we have a great time. We talk about all kinds of things, not just business, but we talk about our families and we talk about, just things you just asked about health. And today we talked about the antitrust suit, for example, and did think that was, a thing that was important or not. So the people come in because never, ever is any day the same. And it's not like a training site. It's not like anything else. It's like getting around the coffee table and just chatting. At first started recording it. The first 2 or 3 or 4 I recorded, but then it started getting personal. I mean, people would talk about personal things, because they started feeling comfortable within the group. And I said, I can't record this. So none of them are recorded. Everybody feels comfortable to say whatever they want to say. And sometimes it gets a little off color too, but other times it really is just like people coming in. You know how people will go to a restaurant at times, sit around the coffee table together, and they'll be there every morning. You've seen it before, and it's just, that's the way they start their day. Well, that's what this has become, and I've been doing it for over 4.5 months. I started it because of the COVID-19, and our business are no different than anyone else. Of course, we are a little more insulated because our life is behind the computer and we're at home most of the time anyway, or in a home office, whatever the case might be. But I realized that no, that's not always the case. They're not able to talk to other people on the outside. So why don't we bring it inside and let everybody have a chance to chat due to the separation that's been caused by the COVID. That's how it began. And I guess I'll continue to do it as long as people want to come and enjoy it. So we're actually coming up almost to our 5th month of doing it. So different kinds of strokes, right, Francis?
Absolutely. And how can they find out about that show if they want to join? It'll be 6 o'clock Pacific Standard. Is that correct? 9 o'clock Eastern?
That is correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you'd like to join us, we'd be happy to have you. We have such a variety, all of them very talented people. We have the writers, we have coaches, we have digital marketers, we have, it really covers the gamut. We have the software developers, but the coaches and the consultants are there, and they may be teaching some of the same things that Francis does. Some of the same things that you might want to see from a coach that develops your business. So such a variety. That's what makes it so exciting, is the variety of people that are there.
Christopher, what have you not done in life that you dream about often?
I think probably, strangely enough, I have tried to do as much as I can on my bucket list along the way. If I had any one thing, I think it would be overseas travel, because I've never gone overseas. During my sports marketing company, I put on over 350,000 air miles out of O'Hare, Chicago. It was wonderful because then they had some great mileage benefits, So I had with that many miles, I had 4 or 5 trips that we took easily without costing us anything. But I think going overseas and visiting other countries, and that's something I would love to do, no doubt about it. Or second thing on my list would be, I might like to actually move down to Colombia or somewhere in that area, buy a nice little place, set up my business and say, okay, guys, I'm here. If you want to talk to me, here, let's go.
Christopher, what is your best discovery in business or life?
I guess I'll have to go on the personal side here, Francis. People ask me, how do you have a long and successful marriage? And because mine lasted 40 years, it would have lasted longer, of course, but I can make it very easy as far as the answer goes. The secret to a great marriage is being friends first. Make sure that that person that you're getting passionate about or foaming at the mouth about, so to speak, that is your best friend, because some of the other side of it fades over time, but the friendship never fades. That's the thing that you keep with you the whole time. That to me is the thing I've learned in my life that I think is most important.
Christopher, if someone wrote an autobiography about you, what would the title be?
No fear. I think that's the secret to business entrepreneurs. By no fear, I mean, take the risk. Massive imperfect action, which is not a quote from me, it's a quote from someone else, but massive imperfect action. Don't stand around and wait for your LLC to come through or for even your website to be built. When I started my business, and of course, this is not necessarily true now, but it was then. It was 3 years before I had my own website, and my main sales were websites. Now figure that one out, right? Don't wait. Don't have any fear. Don't fear making the call. If you're picking up and just calling someone out of the blue, don't fear walking in the door. You have to have that feeling of confidence that you are a solution. You are the solution to their problem, and you should not ever fear anything that you're doing. Take fear out of the picture, and you'll find success comes more quickly.
Talk about your top 2 influencers and what lessons do they teach you?
Well, I think we can actually go back when my first incarnation. I actually graduated from Texas Tech University with a music education degree, okay, not business. And I think at that point, probably my biggest mentor was a professor that I had named Dean Killian. He was a real guider in my life. And soon thereafter came another one these are all in my younger days, not as much recently, actually. Another one was during the summers, I would sell real estate. And I happened to be part of a developer that was actually doing what's called manufactured housing. And he had a subdivision that he manufactured houses under a roof, pulled them out and set them down on foundations in the subdivision. It was building them right there. And his big advice was, first of all, be smart about your money, know your numbers, and know in your own heart whether you have integrity or not. So he said, just talking about the numbers, knowing your numbers and your integrity, if you do even those 2 things and are successful in those in your life, you've done a great deal, because those will save you, literally. Integrity itself is maybe again, a word that's overused. I guess the one is more on the, I guess you'd say, scriptural side, but that is do the things you do even when people aren't looking. I'm paraphrasing that, probably incorrectly paraphrasing it, but just because people are looking, you do this, and people aren't looking, you do that. Do the same thing when people aren't looking. That's the core of integrity, in my estimation, anyway.
Christopher, talk to a younger you. What advice would you give to a younger Christopher?
To the younger Christopher, a very interesting question. You know, everything that you do in life sets you on a different course. You'll make some bad decisions along the way. There's no doubt about it. But that opens up another path. I'm not sure that I would, except for the fact that I would say that I might have gone to business school instead of being a band director for a while, but that would have changed my path too. I wouldn't be here now had I done that. So I truly believe in not really changing anything. And I know that some people are desperate. I know people are having a hard time in business right now, but all it is, if it doesn't make you tougher, then yeah, you need to, find something else. It's not an entrepreneurial type of situation, but that's okay if you do. It doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that you've changed direction. And I guess so that kind of brings me in a circle here. I guess if I were to have advice for a younger Christopher, that is, again, be willing to make changes when necessary. And realize the only thing constant is change. Don't be upset about it. Roll with it and improve it. So if that's advice, then I guess that would be the advice I would have given myself. Because, boy, when things changed when I was younger, I got really upset. And that I would tear things, not really physically, I would tear myself up because I would think, oh, you failed. You didn't get it right. Why did you do that? Not realizing that it was headed somewhere else. I didn't realize that. And I would just tell myself, don't worry about it. You're headed in a different direction. Just follow your path. That's all.
What drives you every day to continue doing what you do, Christopher?
Oh, it kind of goes in line with with one of the other questions, and that is what drives me again is knowing that I have the ability to help others. And if I didn't, I've been pretty transparent so far. I'll be transparent now. I'm in my 70s, for goodness sake. In your 70s, sometimes I look at guys and they're sitting on the porch and they're in their rocker and they're got their coffee and the newspaper in their hand and they're going, hey, it looks like we had a little trouble down in Atlanta. How about that? Okay, well, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? I said, well, I'm sorry, that's not me. When I get to that point of not being able to communicate, educate, consult, and be a part of a community that either someone else has built or I've built, then I know that's the time to hang it up. But I don't plan to hang anything up for quite a few years from now. But so my motivation comes from just knowing that I can, that I'm healthy. I'm very grateful for my health. And I'm moving forward every day with new projects, new ideas, and things that I know will be successful. Every day I find new things, every day.
Is there a social cause that's tied to your business?
Not really, no. If you're talking about, a local situation or a charity of sorts, I guess that's what you're maybe referring to. I find that I spend plenty of money helping others in the business. And although, yes, I support many, in my heart, I support many causes, I usually spend my money helping others, either buying a specific product that they need in order to be successful and giving it to them or giving them programs that I've purchased. Although I'm not really a shiny object purchasing kind of guy, not anymore anyway. Learned that the only time I actually will invest in something is when it actually directly helps a specific area that I'm developing right then. So I guess the answer really is my charity are those folks that I mentor. That's my charity.
When it's all said and done, Christopher, talk about your legacy. How do you want to be remembered?
I heard someone say the other day that legacies are overrated. And the reason he said that was if you walk through any cemetery and even in areas that are recent or whatever, and you see maybe a former mayor or a congressman or something like that passed away 4 or 5 years ago. Do you know his name? Probably not. Do you know what he did? Probably not. But so legacies are overrated. What I only hope is that whoever I have helped passes it on, because I may not be remembered, but yet what I passed on may be remembered, even though it may not have my name attached to it, which is fine with me. That it's not. I'm not in it for the glory and the name recognition at all. Not at least when it comes to legacy in regards to that. When it comes to podcast and some other business, yeah, you're darn right. I want my name attached. I want people to know about me. You bet I do. But again, I think legacies are overrated.
Talk about technology. What is a technology tool or a platform that is a must-have in managing your business day to day?
Oh, there's little doubt that that platform is Zoom. We have come to the point now that we are a virtual society. And every time that I have a meeting, it's on Zoom. Anytime that I talk with a client, it's on Zoom. Anytime I do a consultation, it's on Zoom. Why? Because first of all, they usually live in another state. But even more so, if it's a local client, I don't want to take the chance of causing them problems physically and vice versa. I think right now the most important tool I use every day, multiple times a day, is Zoom itself. And there are a couple of other platforms. And of course, Skype is one of them. I use one for my podcast called StreamYard, which is an excellent podcast platform. The virtual platforms that offer you a chance to meet with people virtually in person, like Francis and I are right now, this particular Zoom podcast that we're doing right now. And I think that is probably the most important tool out there right now, period.
Christopher, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
Christopher, do you feel like that you have too big an ego and you expect people to listen to you or not, regardless? And I guess my answer would be is I don't believe I have too big an ego, but it's hard to judge for yourself. And I don't ever expect people to believe what I say or listen to what I say without checking it out and being their own, determining themselves what they want to do. So yeah, it's always about trying to remain, when you're driving, it's like let's use again back to Amazon, Jeff Bezos. Do you think Jeff has an ego? Of course he does. A huge ego. I mean, massive ego. And somebody walks, by him and he's in control of them or employee or whatever the case might be, and they don't agree, believe me, they're going to hear about it. Well, I don't want to be that kind of director, but I know that ego is important to success. If you don't have ego, then you're going to be missing a lot of things. You have to believe so hard in yourself, but you don't have to throw it in people's faces. That's what the difference in having a good ego that drives you forward and having an ego that drives people away. Very important distinction in ego, but ego is important.
Christopher, we've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I'd like you to give very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Of course. What do I win at the end?
You might win a trip to your local chamber.
Good answer. All right.
Christopher, the last movie you saw?
Well, the last one was actually on Sunday, and I watched it on purpose. It was a rerun. It's an older movie. It's called On Golden Pond. Of course, the two Fondas acting in it. And to me, that's a very, very moving movie. So nothing recent. Nothing as far as a recent release, but that's the most recent film I've watched.
Your first job?
My first job was working for the city of Amarillo, Texas, in the summers between college semesters or college breaks, summer breaks. And I worked on a seal coating crew. That's where you lay down tar and then lay down rock on top of it. And when you're sitting around that tar and all that rock and it's already 99-degree summer day. That was a tough job. And first we got harassed because the regular workers, we'd walk in the mornings and sit around the table and they'd just say, hey, you college boys, you're just weak. You don't know how to do things. So my first job was quite the experience.
You relaxed doing what?
I relaxed listening to podcasts.
Your favorite singer?
You keep aging me here, Francis, but Barbara Streisand.
What food you eat every week no matter what?
Bananas.
Christopher, we want to thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, why don't you share with our audience the best way that they can connect with you and do business with you, and feel free to give them your social media handles.
Well, thank you, Francis. I do appreciate that. But the main thing that I would just ask you to do is remember the words for the group site. And that is Local Chamber Influencers. And the best way to contact me is always through Facebook Messenger, Christopher Knight. And I find that emails get hidden from me, and I stay in touch with my private messages on Facebook. I think Frances even laughed at me about that herself. So that's the easiest way to contact me, either through the group or through Facebook Messenger. And I certainly am happy to talk to anyone that would like maybe some advice or direction or learn more about the chamber. I am always available when somebody reaches out. I'd be happy for you to do so.
Thank you, Christopher. That's a wrap.
Well, thank you, Francis. Wonderful to be on your podcast today. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.